Oh, wonderful. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Beverly. We're going to be talking about harnessing your energy. So I understand that you've done some other workshops around stress. We're going to take that a little bit further. How do you get your energy back when you get that slump? How do you get your energy back when you're worn out, when you're tired out, when you're frustrated? And how do you use that energy to be able to build your resiliency? So we're going to have some fun. I have some game shows that we're going to play. I have some questions that I'm going to ask. If you don't want to answer me, stare right into my eyes. Because the first person that looks away, turns to the person beside them, checks their notebooks, or does any of those kinds of things is usually the first person that I pick on. I don't pick on anybody. We're just going to have some fun. We're going to learn from each other and kind of enjoy each other's company. We're going to be talking about tips and strategies, okay? So as we go through. So up here I have my stress thermometer. And my stress thermometer goes all the way from going to explode down to mind numbing. Where have you been over the last couple of weeks? So I want you to think about the last 2 weeks of your life, all of the things that have been going on, Canada Day celebrations, all kinds of things that have been happening. Where would you put your stress level? How many of you are kind of near the top of my thermometer? You're in that going to explode crisis kind of area? Couple? Okay. How many of you would be in my bottom end of that scale? Too low, dull, mind-numbing? Nobody. All right. How many of you would be kind of in my just right zone? Just right? Okay. And then how about more than I'd like? Too high? All right. So we were kind of all over the place when we have that thermometer. I want you to think back to March of 2016. Wow. It's a long time ago. Last year, kids are still here, students are still here, all the things that are going on, projects, all those things that you're trying to wrap up, where would your stress level be? How many of you would say your stress level was higher? Think about kind of March, either this year, last year, higher, okay? How many of you say, no, you know what, last year was better, my stress level's lower? A couple of you, good. How many of you say, it's about the same, it's just right where it is? All right. We'll pick another time. I want you to think about September. First week of September. Think about everything that happens that first week of September. Even something as simple as getting here that first week of September. All right, so how many of you say, compared to now, how many of you think your stress level is going to go up? It's going to be higher. Okay. How many of you think, it's going to be exactly where it is right now, about the same? How many of you said, you know what, it's going to be a breeze compared to it is right now. It's going to be lower. Nobody. So we know September is kind of one of those milestones for us, isn't it? Now we hear all kinds of things about our stress, and probably in other presentations you've talked about, where it comes from, what does it do to you, but think about how it changes. How many of you it changes kind of, you can look back 5 years ago, 10 years ago, different stages in your life, and there were certain stages in your life where it was higher, other stages where maybe it wasn't quite so high. Can you see that kind of rhythm? All right. Have you also noticed that sometimes it's changing day over day, week over week? How many of you find it actually changes moment by moment depending on who phones you, who calls you, who walks in the office, yeah, that person. How many of you have that person? Yeah, okay. That can send your stress level up. So we hear all kinds of things about our stress. Now what happens if you stay at the going to explode end for too long? I'll give you a hint. It starts with a D, ends in an E. It's a 3-letter word. You will? Die, right? Yeah, and we hear about that, right? Heart attacks, strokes, diabetes, cancer, all kinds of things related to stress. And in fact, 80 to 90% of all illnesses have a basis in stress, either stress bringing the symptoms about or making the symptoms worse. But what happens if you stay at the bottom end for too long? I'll give you another hint. Starts with a D, ends in an E. It's a 3-letter word. You'll die. There's no such thing as no stress. And I think that's a concept that many people need to get their head around, because often we look at our life and we think, my life will be happier if I didn't have any stress in it. If we could get rid of all of our stress, then we wouldn't be having kind of all these challenges and issues. But being down here at the bottom end isn't what we're trying to strive for. Down here means there's no reason to get up in the morning. There's no connection to the people around you. There's no motivation. You're verging on depression and suicide. Disengagement, that's not where we want to be. We want to find a way to live in that middle range, right? Where we have just enough stress to keep life challenging and motivating and exciting, but not so much that it's causing you to get sick and taking you away from the kinds of things you want to be doing. And so we need to find that happy medium where we kind of have the energy to be able to do the things that we want to do. All right. So there are 6 stages in stress management. What is it? What are the things that are causing your stress? How is it impacting you? What tools do you have available to be able to deal with that? What tools do you need in order to deal with the things that are coming along? What plan do you put in place? And then how do you actually follow through on that plan? So when we look at that kind of steps overall, my big goal is to get to number 5. And my big thing is, okay, most of us have heard all kinds of different things related to stress. And some things are new, and some things it's new research and new things that come out. A lot of the stuff, it's sage old advice that we've heard from, ancestors long ago. Doesn't mean we always do stuff with it, right? How many of you have heard things that you should probably act on and do and follow, but you often don't do it because there's no time? All those kind of wonderful excuses that we can come up with. So my goal for you is to get to the planning stage so that you can get into the acting stage. And I have what I call the SOS approach. And so I'll talk a little bit more about that SOS approach, but what that does is it helps us to find a way to live healthy. So we use the word health quite a bit in the same way that we use the word stress quite often. So let's talk about health. What does health look like for you, or what would a definition of health be for you? What do you think of when you hear the word health? So your mental and physical well-being, the two of those things together, perfect. Nutrition. So am I eating in a way that's going to keep me on a good path, right? Good. What else do you think of? Being active, being able to do the things I want to do. Good.
Wholeness of feeling whole.
Feeling whole, I like that. Feeling kind of put together, right?
Coping with the crap that comes your way.
Yeah, I like coping with the crap, because there's always stuff that we have to deal with, right? Absolutely. And so health, being able to deal with that. And I like that one. That's a good one for me to kind of build on. Because for me, a definition is being able to live your life without feeling overwhelmed. So health, a definition for me is being able to live your life in a way that you're not overwhelmed. So I want you to think about that. Can you have a broken leg and be healthy? Yep, I can see lots of heads nodding. Good. Bless you. Can you be dealing with depression and live healthy and be healthy? That one's a bit tougher. Some of you are saying no, some of you are saying, I don't think so. It's a tough one, isn't it? So let's go back to the person with the broken leg. You can have a broken leg and you can be getting around okay, and you can still go to school, or you can still do your job, able to kind of take care of your family and be very healthy. Not overwhelmed at all, inconvenienced, but not overwhelmed. But then there's some people who have a broken leg and it's devastating, isn't it? It's the worst thing that could happen. Think of an elite athlete who breaks their leg before the race that they've just spent 4 years training for. How devastating that could be, how overwhelmed they would feel, how their purpose is gone, isn't it? So that could lead them to not be healthy. In the same way when we talk about depression, and I'm really glad that you brought the physical and the mental together. Because somebody who's dealing with depression, we know they can struggle, right? There can be all kinds of obstacles, difficulties, finding the right medication, finding the right support system, getting everything under control. But then there are some people who are dealing with depression who've come through to the other side who are, their depression is really well managed. And they have a regime, they have the coping strategies, and they may have breakthroughs, but they see them as breakthroughs. They don't see them as encompassing their entire life. And so they're able to kind of live their life the way that they would like to lead it. So they're not overwhelmed. Does that make sense? And so I like that definition because it can be changing. It can kind of moment to moment, but overall, we can lead to that being a life that's not overwhelmed. So my next word up there is resiliency. So what do you think of when you think of the word resilient? Because we talk about that. That's kind of our new thing. It's not necessarily stress management skills anymore. It's resiliency. It's resiliency skills. So what do you think of when you think of the word resiliency? Yeah.
Being able to get back into your usual way of doing things after something's happened.
Okay, so there's been some sort of incident and you're able to move into being able to manage that and move kind of forward in some sort of way. Good, okay. Back on this side. Yeah.
When I think of that, I think it's the point where you are able to handle situations before they become overwhelming.
Okay.
So your resiliency it enables you not to let things go to the next step.
Okay. So resiliency, so you kind of picture it like a tool belt that helps in prevention in a lot of ways, or even minimizing. So it still may help, but...
Minimizing, yes.
Okay.
So you don't go to the next step, which is what you said previously, that we're overwhelmed.
Good, okay, I like that. What were you going to say?
Positive outlook.
An outlook. So our outlook is definitely impacted, right, by our skills and our resiliency. Somebody in here had their hand up. There we go.
Not easily perturbed or imperturbability.
Okay, perturbed, anxious, frustrated, upset, all of those words, right? Good, good. Anybody picture a ball? When you think of something being resilient, for me, I think of the word bounce. Yeah, it comes to mind too? Perfect. So for me, when I think of resiliency, I think about that Indian rubber ball that you used to play with as a kid, and you could whip it up against the wall, and it would come back. And so for me, it's that ability to come back. But not just come back and bounce. Not just get through the situation. For me, resiliency is being able to deal with that challenge, get through it, muck through it in whatever way, but you're different on the other side, aren't you? And so kind of building on what you're saying, not just that you go back to your routine, but you've grown. You've got experience. You've got tools that you can use the next time, so you've grown from that. And so it's being able to move from a situation, through a situation, forward into the next kind of thing that you're experiencing. And so resiliency is really those skills, those virtues that allow us to be able to live our life in that way. How many of you have had children, no children, were a child at one point? Now, I'd say so it's easier for us to have children and remember these experiences because not many of us actually remember learning how to walk. So for those of you that have watched nieces and nephews and children around you learning how to walk, they are the epitome of resilience, aren't they? Give me one of these.
Yeah.
Do you know why I say that?
Yeah.
Because they what?
Step, 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 fall. Step, 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 fall. Step, you get right back up and up.
And they get right back up again.
And
Yeah.
they don't fall so much anymore.
And they bonk their head and they end up with a goose egg and they cry, but then they shake it off and the next moment they can be laughing because, the cat did something funny or whatever. But they keep going. They keep moving. They keep working their way through. And for me, that's what resiliency looks like. It's not that it's easy for them to learn. Learning how to walk is a really difficult process, both mentally and physically, and the coordination and being able to move things in a way that you've never moved them. It's a very difficult skill. And so for like the challenges that we face when we're at work or we're at home, we get through it. We may have setbacks, we may bonk our head, but on the other side, we've accomplished, we've changed, we've grown. So for me, when I talk about it, it's being able to do that not only with strength, but with spirit and with a sense of humor. And pulling all of those skills, those virtues into our life. And understanding, again, a resilient life is a meaningful life. And having a meaningful life means it's going to be a stressful life. Because we're only stressed out about the things that matter, the things that mean something. We don't stress about the things that don't matter. We stress about the things that do matter. And so when we're stressed out, it's because it matters to us. And so by being resilient, we can work through it. We can get to the other side. We become changed in who we are. All right. Resiliency, and I want to build a little bit on what you were saying. It's not just about a skill set to get us through this moment, though, is it? It's about those skills that help us to live a life that's full and a life that's flourishing. And yes, we're going to meet those challenges along the way. So it's not to get rid of all of the challenges. Being resilient means that you didn't have to do any work, but it means that you have the skills to be able to get through those challenges. And so really that's what we're looking at, being able to build. Flourishing. So we've done health, we've done resiliency. What does it mean to flourish? What do you think of when we talk about flourishing?
Growing.
Growing, I like that one. You know, we talk about, I have plants. My indoor plants do not flourish. I throw them out about a week after I get them, but my outdoor plants, I don't have to do anything and they flourish really well. They grow. What else? What else do you think about when we talk about flourishing? Success. Good. Achievement. Good. Anything else?
You're using your full range of abilities, they're getting extended, weaknesses are even being transmuted into strengths, and a very strong sense of fulfilling your mission in life by you.
Good. There's passion, there's energy, there's power. There's power in being able to use our skills and moving towards excellence in who we are. It's becoming who we are meant to become, right? It's being able to utilize all those things. So I really like that word flourishing, because it's the reason we do this is to be able to grow, to be able to achieve, to be able to be successful and happy, and all of those wonderful things. All right. So situation, ourself, and support. I talked about our SOS plan. And so the tool belt that we put around us has to have tools in all three of those areas. What do we do about the situation? How do we take care of ourselves? And who's there to support us? And over the next 4 topics, or the 4 topics that we're going to be dealing with, we're going to be touching on all 3 of those areas. Today is really focused on the O. How do we make ourselves resilient? And what are the skills? And what are the tips and strategies? And so we're going to talk about 2 parts. What do we do to re-energize ourselves? And what do we do to recover our energy? Both of those, okay? So let's talk about some of those simple ways. We're going to talk about 9 simple things that we can do. 10 simple things. We'll do 10. 10 simple things that you can do, and we'll kind of work our way through them. So I have these things that I call cooler back to school, which I think is really cool since we're in a lecture theater. So cooler back to school. What is the easiest way to break your stress response? Take a break. Even easier than taking a break.
Deep breath.
Deep breath. Breathing. How many of you would go with deep breathing? Good answer. Good answer. So good for me. Fastest, easiest, best thing that you can do to relieve your stress as quickly as possible. We call it our body's manual override, because the ability to take in oxygen releases all kinds of neurotransmitters, and we could go into the science with that, but it helps us to refocus. It brings about creativity so that we can problem solve. It helps to relax our muscles, all kinds of wonderful things that can happen just by taking in more oxygen than we normally do. Most of us only breathe from the top third of our lungs, so we want to expand that. We want to use more of our lung capacity, doing about 5 to 10 deep breaths at a time. So put everything down. Feet flat on the floor, sitting up nice and tall. We're going to experiment with some of these. You can sit or you can stand. Either one. Doesn't matter for this one. He's all ready to go. That's all right. I want you to put one hand underneath your belly button, one hand above your belly button. Yes, you need to show everybody where your belly button is. We are going to breathe in 3 parts. We're going to fill the bottom, fill the middle, fill the top, release the top, release the middle, release the bottom. We're going to go and do 3 breaths. In through our nose, out through our nose, okay? So just follow along with me. Ready? Going in, and out, all the way out. And in, and out. And in, and out. Wonderful. How many of you could feel your shoulders relaxing a little bit? Yeah, good. Anybody feel a little bit dizzy or lightheaded? Couple people in the room? Yeah, that's a cue that you probably do breathe from the top third of your lungs, and all of a sudden you got this whole waft of oxygen and your body went, woo! So we need to do that regularly. We should be taking 5 to 10 of those deep breaths several times throughout the day. I attach it to things. So I attach it to when I'm doing my email. So when I'm looking through my emails, I do my deep breathing. Now, I don't move my hands like this because sometimes I need to do other things, but it's my cue throughout the day that that's my time to be doing my deep breathing. I also do it whenever I get in my car. So on a day like today, when I'm presenting and not in my office, when I get in my car, I do my deep breathing. I stop doing this because other drivers get a little bit nervous, right? When you're moving around. So, but attach it to something so that you remember to add it to your schedule of things. It's an amazing, simple strategy. But often we think that stress management or resiliency needs to be complicated. It doesn't have to be complicated. Does that make sense? Perfect. How many of you are regular deep practitioners, deep breath practitioners? Perfect. And the rest of you will become one, right? All right. How many of you feel like you are sleep deprived? Good. Not good, but you know what I mean, right? All right. How many of you would love to have that great big pillow sitting beside so you could put your head down and just crash for a little bit? Okay. 65%. How many hours of sleep do we need per night? 7 to 8.
7 uninterrupted?
7 uninterrupted? The interruption is a big deal, isn't it?
It is a big deal.
It is a very big deal. Anybody here getting 5 or 6 hours per night? Yeah. Okay. The last study I read said 8 3/4 hours. Wow. And then again, that's per night, not per week, because some of you I think are on that weekly plan, right? So it's being able to get a good night's sleep. And 8 3/4 sounds like a really odd number, but it's based on 90-minute sleep cycles. And when you put 90 minutes together, back to back, you actually lose a little bit of time. So instead of 9 hours, they say 8 3/4 hours. Now, quality and quantity. So if you're in bed for 12 hours, but it's crappy, it's not going to do you any good. Exactly. So we're looking for quality and quantity. But if your quality is good, but your quantity is only 4 or 5 hours, that's not healthy, right? And if you're, like you said, 12 hours, but the quality is good or is bad, that's not going to be helpful either. So we need a good balance in our sleep. Why is it important that we get a good sleep? Here's some of that sage advice that we talked about. We always have heard that we need to get a good night's sleep. Why?
Your brain resets itself every night. The memories get stored where they're supposed to. I think your subconscious probably works away on a few of the things that are bothering you and
Good.
sorts things out.
It sorts things out. So mentally, it's beneficial, right? Because we know when you're sleep deprived for a long period of time, you can go right into hallucinations and delusions, right? So it helps to put the mental back together. What were you going to say?
Does it also not help if you dream? If you can sleep enough to the point where you can actually start dreaming, it helps your creativity.
Good. And so that's part of that quality of sleep, isn't it? So that we're able to go through a full sleep cycle where we're in deep sleep and dream sleep, and it's a good balance of both. What were you going to say?
It's when the body heals itself.
Absolutely. So not only mentally, but physically, that's when our body puts itself back together. And if you're not sleeping long enough or getting the right kind of sleep, then your body and your mind aren't going to be as healthy and as resilient as they need to be. So we need to spend some time on that. And we do that with kids, don't we? We give them a bedtime routine. And we know when they don't follow that bedtime routine, they're like spinning the next day. They're explosive. So we need to make sure that we're following a bedtime routine for ourselves. All right. If you're sleeping properly, you will have most of your energy first thing in the morning. You will have the least amount in the middle of the afternoon. How many of you can recognize that time frame? This is part of that time frame. It's that 1 to 3 o'clock. Yeah, if I stop talking, how many of you it would take like less than 30 seconds to fall asleep? Yeah. It's when we do the head bobs, all kinds of things. And so this is really important because what happens when you hit that dip in the middle of the afternoon? What do we often go for? Coffee, chocolate, sugar. And then we get on this roller coaster, don't we? And so we need to find ways of being able to manage our energy cycles. A long time ago when we were cavemen and cavewomen, we had a rhythm to life, but we've lost that rhythm. Cavemen and cavewomen, you got up in the morning, you went for a hunt, you killed the beast, you ate it for lunch, and you had a nap. Yeah. And that's what life was all about. But now we get up in the morning, we're late for work, we've got to fight traffic to get here. By the time we get there, there's this meeting and that meeting, there's this report and that report. Our computer crashes in the middle of the afternoon. We've got to get home, we've got to get the kids off to whatever activity. And when we get home, we're way up here. How many of you kind of feel like that's the trajectory of your day? It just seems to keep building, and then you crash. And then it builds and builds and builds and builds, and then you crash. And so we need to have a better rhythm to our life. And part of being resilient is building in that rhythm. How many of you have had your coworkers, your colleagues, your friends, your family members, or even yourself wear this badge of honor? I was so busy today that I didn't even have time to go pee. I know, some of you are, I don't want to put my hand up, but yep. How many of you, I was so busy today that I didn't even have time for lunch. I was so busy today that I didn't even have time to stand up or sit down. Yeah, depending on the role that you have. That's a sign that we've lost that rhythm, isn't it? And so we need to get that rhythm back. This scale, you have most of your energy first thing in the morning. That's when you should really be looking at doing the most difficult things. This is when conflict management should happen. This is when problem solving. This is when you're doing those things that require your focus. Some of you can organize your day that way. Some of you, that may not be a reality. The afternoon, that's the time when you do things such as, putting stuff away and organizing and not making major decisions. But often I go into corporations, and this is when they have their brainstorming. Let's set the vision and mission and strategy for the next 5 years and see, and this is when we're going to have our team meeting and discuss all of our problems, when most people can barely get their head off the table, right? And so look at the way that you kind of manage your energy. Look for the things that can give you that rhythm as opposed to the caffeines and the chocolates. Getting outside for a light break. This is a beautiful time of year, but it's just as important when it's storming as it is when it's nice and sunny out. Drinking a glass of cool water. Rehydrate yourself is a way of also boosting that energy. So look for all of those kinds of things that will help you to kind of re-energize throughout the day. Practice the art of recovery. What do you do to recover? What is it? What are some of these things that give you rhythm, that give you recovery? What do you do? What are some of your techniques? Not a darn thing. You think, yeah. Ah, perfect. You go and meditate. That's a beautiful way. Yeah, some of you think about meditation and go, oh my gosh, I don't want to sit there going, That would be the last thing you would choose. So there's lots of other ways. It's a wonderful way to bring everything back into focus, isn't it? Good. Go for a walk. Excellent. Oh, I'm going to go this way. I'll go this. Read a book. Perfect. Reading a book is one of the, they say even 6 minutes of reading can significantly lower your stress level. Unless you're reading a textbook for that class that you're studying for, right? Okay. What were you going to say? Have a drink. Water is an excellent suggestion. Yeah, there's lots of different things that we can do. And there's some things that are more on the positive and legal side of things, and then there's some things that are not so positive, and some things that are not so legal as well, right? But the art of recovery, looking for those things that are going to take it from up here to down here. Cool or back to school? What percentage of our Canadian diet is made up of processed foods? You've got a number in mind? All right. 71, let's see. Nope. Okay, I heard a couple of different things. So I heard the 47. Nope. Think it's 62. How many are going to go with the 62 over the 23? Yep, all right, let's see. Oh, where'd my mouse go? There it is. Oh, hang on. You have to hear this. There's got to be a reinforcement in here somewhere. Perfect. All right, so 62% of our diet is made up of processed foods. Think about that. That we've gotten rid of kind of the raw foods, that we've done all those kinds of things, right? So we need to look at how we put that together. Anybody know what GIGO stands for? Get it to go. Never heard that, but that's amazing. Which would be the opposite of what I just said, but
it's garbage in, garbage out.
Garbage in, garbage out. I love that. Remind me at the end that I need to write that down. All right. If you're not putting good things in, you're not going to have the energy to be able to be resilient. And so, looking at the way that you eat, and we know this stuff, right? We've heard this stuff. We read the magazine articles and the journal articles that tell us how to eat. But I want you to think about eating for resiliency. Eating for energy is much different than, when we make those choices. All right, cool or back to school. What is our average sugar consumption per person per year? All right, so per person per year. What do you got here? I heard 126. 73.
48. 48.
Oh, wow. 151 pounds per person per year is our average consumption. So I want you to think about that sugar that's hidden in foods when they're processed, right? To make them taste good. And so even though we may think that we're eating okay, but it's hidden in a lot of stuff. And we've gone over the last 2 centuries from 4 pounds to 151 pounds. Think about how long it takes for our bodies to evolve. We have not evolved to keep up with that kind of a diet, and so that's why we're having a lot of these issues. All right, so it's recommended 9.5 teaspoons, and we're having on average, 22. Our teenagers, 32. Now, that number is slowly changing for our teenagers for the better, because there's a lot more awareness around pop soda. And so we're seeing some changes in those numbers, and I hope that we continue to see more changes in those numbers. Stretching exercises. All right, I want everybody to stand up, find a spot that you can claim as your own. Feel free to use the aisleways or the front or the sides, anything that kind of gives you some space. If you're sitting beside a friend, make sure that there's at least one seat in between you. That way you're not going to bonk heads or anything silly like that. All right, how many of you, when you get stressed out, tight, you feel it in neck and shoulders? Yes? Okay. So we're going to do a couple neck and shoulder ones. I want you to stand with your feet shoulder width apart. Your knees are slightly bent. Your arms are hanging comfortably down at your side. The very first one that we're going to do is for our neck. You are going to take your chin and look over your right shoulder. That would be the other right for some of you. There you go. And then slowly back to the middle, looking over your left shoulder. And back to the middle. Now what we want to do is we want to keep our shoulders level. So our shoulders don't come up. Our ear is going to come down to our shoulder. So you're going to drop your right ear down to your right shoulder. Do not let you're wondering where I was going. I got you. So your right ear to your right shoulder. So don't pull up. Keep those shoulders nice and relaxed. Tilting your head over to the side, let that stretch through, let those arms hang. And back up. Left ear to left shoulder. And back up. How many of you could feel that pulling and tugging? Yeah. So what happens is those things tighten up, they shrink up, they shorten up, and then we lose our mobility. And so when I'm watching some of you, you've lost some of that mobility left to right. So we need to do several of those throughout the day to lengthen those, to keep those limber. All right, one of the things that we know is not only can we stretch them to get them to relax, but we can squeeze them to get them to relax. And so you're going to make 2 fists, the side of your body. You're going to pull your shoulders up to your ears, and you're going to squeeze until I say stop. Ready? Pull them up. Squeeze, 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 squeeze. Harder, harder, harder. Squeeze, squeeze. And let them go. Yeah, and there's that afterwards. All right, pull them up. Squeeze, 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 squeeze. Harder, harder, harder. Squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. And let them go. Right ear to right shoulder. And back up. Left ear to left shoulder. And up. All right. So find a way to work that into your schedule. All of these stretching exercises help to get our blood flowing. They help to get the oxygen flowing around our body, helps with creativity, helps to get rid of the stress that builds up. We're going to do we'll do 2 more. We're going to do our ribs, because when we sit, we get scrunched and it makes it harder to breathe. And we'll do our hips, because when we sit, all of that gets squished together too. So let's do our upper ribs first. Feet, shoulder width apart, knees slightly bent. If you have any sort of back issues, be very careful with this. We don't want anybody getting hurt. Hands on your hips. For the first one, our shoulders are going to do the rotating, okay? So our hips are going to stay stationary. Our hips are going to be the pivot point. Our shoulders are going to do the rotating. So my head is going to lean forward. I want you to imagine that your head is, you're bent at the waist, bend over as far as you can, Your head is pointing at 12 o'clock if you were looking at the face of a clock. You are now going to go over to 3 o'clock. Now, I want you to picture 3. 3 is not leaning forward. 3 is right over on the side. So if I was to take my hand over, I'd be going kind of like I'm a little teapot kind of thing. So if you can check, not this way, but this way. Okay, so over this side. So 3 o'clock, go back to 6 o'clock. Oh, crunch, crunch, crunch. And then to 9 o'clock. Again, feel that stretch throughout your ribs. Feel that kind of all the way through there. And then to 12 o'clock. And come over at 12. Good. Go the other way. 12, 9, 6, 3, and back to 12. Excellent. Now, you should be able to feel that in here, right? All right, next one. Feet shoulder width apart, knees slightly bent, hands on your hips. Shoulders are now the pivot point, hips doing the motion. I want you to put your hips out to 12 o'clock, and it looks like this. Yeah. I want you to imagine you're at work right now at your desk. Somebody's watching what you're doing. This is the hangout position. Hips go over to 3 o'clock. Just your hips. Keep those shoulders still. Pushing out through your hips. Bums out to 6. Over to 9. Back out to the hangout position. There you go. You're getting the feel for this. Go the opposite way. 9, 6, 3, and hang out. Perfect. And a step to the right. There you go. Perfect. Have a seat. Nicely done. And yes, you are caught on camera doing that. All right. Any idea? So that was our stretching exercises. Moving on to our next tip. Any idea what 100 equals 10 means? 100 what? Really good guess. But 100, laughing 100 times a day is the equivalent of 10 miles of running. It was actually 10, it was the equivalent of a 10-mile run. In all of the big belly laugh, the flow of endorphins, all of the kinds of things that go with it. There's a whole...
Not doing anything for your leg muscles.
No, so it's not making your leg muscles any stronger, but your stress management skills, right? Now, this was actually in the Globe and Mail, and they actually quoted the research slightly off. It's so laughing 100 times a day is the equivalent of 10 minutes on a rowing machine or 15 minutes on an exercise bike. I am way more likely to do 100 laughs than I am 10 minutes on any exercise machine or running 10 miles. So for me, humor is really important. Having fun, being able to let go and show and do and enjoy the people around me helps to kind of keep not only physiologically, but mentally, because it puts everything into perspective, doesn't it? When we can laugh at it, when we can enjoy it, when we can see the challenges and see through them and still see that there's something to enjoy on the other side, that's huge when it comes to our energy. All right, how many of you have seen or watched Cash Cab? All right, so this is my mini version of Cash Cab. Here's question number 1. So this is for the $1 million, okay? They don't do $1 million, but we'll pretend today. What is the number 1 personality trait that promotes happiness? Sense of humor. Let me see. No. Good guess, though, especially since that's what we just talked about. Positivity. Strike 2. Who is brave enough to do the third guess? It's a very simple one. A personality trait that promotes happiness. Let's try. That was a good guess. Get out of my cab. There you go. All right. What it is. Again, thank you for playing, and thank you for being the third guess, because that's always a tough place to be. It is, there we go, gratitude. How simple can that be? to say please, to say thank you, to appreciate the things that you've been blessed with, to appreciate how far you've come on your challenges, the people that have helped you out along the way. And so when they look at happiness, gratitude is the number one personality trait related to people being happy. And it's one that we have control over. How many of you do a gratitude journal? A gratitude journal? Just even writing down. Yeah. So think about those things. Even the way that you do it on social media, you can do, on your Facebook. Today I'm thankful for. What a wonderful way to kind of be infectious to other people, to show that, even when things are challenging, doesn't mean that your life's perfect. When you say, hey, I'm thankful for this, doesn't mean to say, I've got everything. But hey, I'm thankful for what I do have. I'm even thankful that I have 2 boys that fight all the time. I'm not always that thankful. But just being grateful for the things that are around us. All right. Being grateful and our sense of humor both play into this quote. And this quote for me is one of my favorite ones. It says, what the caterpillar calls the end of the world, the master calls a butterfly. And it's about life perspective, isn't it? Our sense of humor and being grateful is part of our perspective. And when we want to build our resiliency, when we're trying to harness that energy, our perspective can rule all of those things, right? And we've seen that. We've seen where 2 people have gone through a difficult situation and how one is twisted in a knot and the other one goes, no big deal, let's just get through it, right? And so our perspective on who we are, what skills we have, what our purpose is, all of those things matter. So now what? What do you do with all of this? This is one out of 4 series of workshops that we're doing, but this was just talking about some simple things that you have control over, some simple things that you can do to build up your resiliency. There's lots of other ones that we'll talk along the way, but those 10, actually we've only covered 9, but those 9 will take you a long way when it comes to leading that full and flourishing life. Are there any questions before I wrap this up? Which one has been your favorite one so far? Exercising, the stretching ones. What were you saying up there? Gratitude. You were surprised with that one. Good. I absolutely can. I will make sure that they get it at the office and they can send that. Okay? You're welcome. All right. I want you to think, because part of that SOS was a plan, right? It's what are you going to do with this stuff? And that's what the now what is. What are you going to do with some of this information? How are you going to kind of incorporate it? So I talked about, attaching some of it to my email, attaching some of it to how I talk to people and saying pleases and thank yous and acknowledging people. So figure out how you can incorporate those 9. Here's my last one. I have 2 boys. And they fight a lot, and they get on my nerves, but I love them dearly. They are now 18 and 20 years old. But I remember that day, and it was in August, and they were little, and I was picking them up from daycare, and it was hot, and it was humid, and I was in a terrible mood. It had been a really tough day. And all I wanted to do was to pick them up and get home and get on with the things that we had to do when we were at home. And so I picked up the 2 boys, and from the back seat, I heard, "Mommy, guess what?" And I cringed. And you're wondering, why did you cringe? Well, it was one of those things where I'm like, I don't want to do this right now. Because you see, my oldest son in daycare was learning words from the older kids. Those words that you don't want them to say when they're out in public. And he would learn these words, and he would wait till the end of the day, and he would launch one of these words on me to see what kind of a reaction he got. And if I had don't say that, then that was a keeper kind of word. And so he was in this, and he's like, "Mommy, guess what?" And I thought, oh. So my first instinct was to turn that radio up. And just turn the radio up and pretend I didn't hear him. Oh no. And then that mommy guilt took over. How many of you have experienced that mommy or daddy guilt? Yeah. So I said to him, "What?" And it had that kind of a tone to it. And he looked back at me and he said, "Mommy, your sunflowers are awesome." Awesome was his new word of the day. That was a keeper in my books. But what was very cool was that those sunflowers were awesome. Wow. Holy is right. Now, the two of us had planted those at the beginning of the spring. We had watered them, we had weeded them, but it wasn't until that particular day that I actually stopped and looked at them. They were awesome. They were 12 to 15 feet tall. I have no idea where I got these sunflower seeds from, but they were awesome. And you know, sometimes we get so caught up in the stuff that we forget to see the awesome. Those things have been growing for weeks, but until that particular day, I hadn't noticed them. And so my challenge for you when it comes to being resilient, when we talk about gratitude and perspective, notice what's happening around you. Notice the people that you're hanging out with. Notice those ones that are fun to be, that give you energy, that just, you know, you can't wait to see them. Notice, you know, the energy from the students when they come in. And you don't have to be out in the middle of the Kawarthas like I am, but even something as simple as, I used to love going onto Bloor Street in downtown Toronto with the Elvis Moose. How many of you saw the Elvis Moose? You know when they used to decorate the moose for charity? This moose was in the white garb, rhinestones all over it, big black slicker kind of Elvis hair, made me smile every single time. And so it's about being able to be in that moment and notice the things that are happening, because that changes everything. It gives you that resiliency. It helps you to flourish. It's not just about this particular challenge that I'm facing. It's to be able to see that there's lots of things in my life that I've gone through, that I can enjoy, and that I'm up for all of those things that are happening. I've given you some tools to think about, the 10 different strategies. I hope one of them rings true for you to put into your tool belt to use more regularly. I want to thank you so much for your time, your attention, and your energy. Thank you so much for coming out. There is no such thing as a workshop without the workshop evaluation. So if you can fill out that evaluation form, let me know what you liked, what you didn't like, and I will make sure I pass that information forward. And I hope I get to see most of you on Thursday. And coming out, and we'll be talking about kind of, I think Thursdays around connection and social connection. Perfect. I'm going to pass it over.